Wild question here. Have you ever felt the need to do something festive for the holidays out of tradition so you feel like you're participating? Stuff like bringing mashed potatoes for Thanksgiving or hiding Easter eggs. Just like the bare minimum necessity to say, yeah, I celebrated it. Now my family and neighbors won't be asking why I'm such a sad sack of depression all the time. I know there's at least one of you introverts out there who's like that, because that's almost always who I am. Other than Christmas, I don't really like to participate all that much in holiday-themed activities unless the people around me can make it fun. That's why I'm 17 and still go out trick-or-treating in costume, because my friends and I can still make it worthwhile. My point is, I usually don't like to make big shows out of holiday-based events unless there's fun to be had, so that's why I'm making this video. You see, one of my favorite holidays actually isn't one belonging specifically to my culture, that being Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. Basically, if you've never taken a middle school Spanish class, it's a 2-day holiday on the 1st and 2nd of November, celebrating and giving tribute to those that have passed on in a big party to honor their lives. I've always admired the aesthetic of everything involved with the festivals. Lots of brightly colored sugar skulls, orange cempasúchil flowers, delicious food, paper cutout banners, and candles, like lots of fucking candles. There's a real contrast between the macabre of items shaped like human bones and warmly colored ornaments that fit so well together when you look at them. My original exposure to the holiday actually came from an animated movie I saw at a young age that really stuck with me as time went on. And though I don't really see people talking too much about it nowadays, there's always going to be room in my mind to remember the film, The Book of Life. With executive producer Guillermo del Toro and director Jorge Gutierrez, The Book of Life tells the story of two gods related to the holiday Dia de los Muertos, making a bet upon which of two friends will marry the girl they both have a crush on. From there, it's a story of self-discovery, going against tradition, and the complexities of love. Released in 2014, it didn't do terribly at the box office, but it didn't exactly break records either. A few years later, Coco came out, and most people forgot about The Book of Life, but I sure as hell didn't. In fact, I'd consider The Book of Life a much better film than Coco in many regards. So if people don't remember it with so much time passed, I'll make them remember with this video. Buckle up, boys, we're about to get into the tricky art of... But before that, how about I fill you in a bit more on today's sponsor, Shudder. Personally, as a big fan of horror movies, I've always had a fondness for the genre, but I've never seen the same kind of focus placed on it by a streaming service like Shudder does. Not only does it collect a large range of horror classics and modern thrillers from every part of the world all in one place, but it's also got new content in the form of TV shows and movies that it pumps out weekly. Shudder's expertly curated collection includes must-see titles like Vicious Fun, The Mortuary Collection, and PG Psycho Goreman, something that I would especially recommend. Plus, all the best horror documentaries in the hit Creepshow TV series from executive producer Greg Nicotero of The Walking Dead. Looking through their catalog, some bits that caught my eye more than anything were the Joe Bob Last Drive-In specials, featuring one of my favorite nostalgic horror movie hosts doing the same fun commentary he's always done. And guess what? You can only find that on Shudder, which costs way less than most streaming services for only $6 a month or $57 annually. Plus, it's completely ad-free. So if that sounds appealing to you and you want to join the vastly growing community around Shudder and its content, go to shudder.com through my link in the description and get 30 days off free with the promo code JUSTSTOP. That's SHUDDER.com. Thanks for listening, and on with the video. As far as literary devices go for stories involving love, the crossroads of multiple interested partners is among one of the most common. Two guys like a girl, or two girls like a guy, or one of each like one, or there's actually a love square, or a pentagon, or... whatever the hell Miraculous Ladybug did, you get my point. People use it a lot, and when they use it, most of the time, you can't help but see it fall into many of the same tropes. On TV, it's always, oh no, protagonist Jones has gotten 2 love letters from different girls and doesn't know how to respond. Or he asks one girl out, gets rejected, and then asks another girl who says yes, but then the first girl decides to go back on what she said. So now he has 2 dates to go on at once! These kinds of storylines are why I like stuff like the Scandal arc in Gintama, where the main lead thinks he slept with 6 different people and tries to live and date all of them at the same time to comedic effect. These kinds of tropes are better used as parodies than serious stories, because they always come down to similar conclusions, and the execution in between is almost always the same. At least when thinking in single episode of TV standards. If you go to movie lengths or TV show arcs, there's a whole new set of issues and overused ideas for your viewing displeasure. If I could sum up all the issues with bad love triangle stories that go on for more than 22 minutes in one word, it would be selective. Most bad media I've seen with a love triangle plot tries to really make you root for one character over the other in one way or another. In stories about guys going after the girl, what they'll do is make one of the love interests a complete piece of wood so the protagonist doesn't have much competition. He's almost always a jock or a jerk or superficial model who you don't understand why the lead girl character keeps putting up with for any reason other than providing an obstacle for the protag's big moment of standing up for himself against the mean bully that wants his girl. That, or they completely demonize the other love interest to make the main character look like a hero trying to save the girl from a heartless monster that does nothing but abuse her because he's a one-dimensional piece of cardboard for the main character to save his damsel from. Thankfully, the Book of Life doesn't fall into any of these tropes, and I am forever grateful for that fact. First of all, they passed the barrier so many lesser love triangle stories have done, and actually made all three characters involved, well, characters. Each one of them has distinct traits that make up who they are as people, and while some might be spotlighted more than others, it's never to a point where you feel like they've turned into stereotypes. The two main guys, Joaquin and Manolo, are actually written intentionally to be similar in several ways, such as having prestigious lineages, big expectations, and of course, the same girl to go after. And thanks to that connection, it helps us as the audience see that they aren't so different. The movie makes it a point to show that it isn't idolizing either character above one another. Both have moments of triumph where they get the chance to try winning Maria, the love interest's heart, and on the flip side, both get into situations where their flaws are exposed just as plainly.
Me too?
Sure, Joaquin can be full of himself and headstrong since he grew up with a medal that granted him infinite strength, but Manolo is also a bit foolhardy and kind of gullible. The overarching narratives of the story might have more focus on Manolo, his family, and the journey he takes to get back to the living world after being cheated, but both he and Joaquin have enough time given to them to improve and stand together. On that same note, for once you can understand why Maria would potentially want to go with either of them. Manolo is more outwardly sentimental and modest, but he also thinks it won't take that much to get with Maria. Joaquin, on the other hand, is charming and heartfelt in the places where it counts, but like I mentioned, he can be pretty arrogant and airheaded in his approach to get with her. They both feel like real people that you could actually have a tough time deciding over if you were in Maria's shoes, making it all the more believable that she wouldn't be willing to give up a kiss or marriage after a single action. It takes time for her to make a decision about who she wants to be with, and that makes her feel so human. At points, the movie could potentially even convince you that the outcome isn't certain with how well matched the two are in trying to get Maria's heart. Let's be real though, if the movie did make it more conspicuous from the beginning who it was Maria was going to pick, general audiences would probably still think twice about it since Joaquin isn't constantly twirling his mustache about how badly he's gonna treat Maria when he gets her, and that Manolo is nothing more than a bug to crush under his feet. Speaking of which, that's gotta be one of the best parts of this whole love triangle. Manolo and Joaquin have been playfully fighting over Maria since they were kids, and she's always been the one to have to break them up and say what they're doing is stupid. So the same thing happens when they're grown up. Every time it looks like the two are going to get into some kind of fight over Maria with swords or whatever, she's always there to break them up and say how stupid the cliche is to begin with. It gives the movie a self-awareness so many films are sorely missing, and their general dynamic makes the ending work so much better. Manolo gets with Maria, but in the trio's final fight against the big bandit villain Chacal, Joaquin is still willing to potentially have himself die for Manolo's sake, and the two have no bad blood about it from the time Maria's decision is made because Joaquin respects it. He wanted her to love him, but he didn't demand it and had no ulterior motive for getting it to go his way. Near the end of the movie, even trying to say Maria didn't have to marry him if she didn't want to, as he knew she was only doing it to keep her town safe by getting him to stay. Everyone is just so likable and brimming with personality throughout the whole movie, making it never frustrating to watch, and the man we have to thank for that is a guy by the name of Jorge R. Gutierrez. Believe it or not, I've been a big fan of Gutierrez's work since I was a kid. His first original cartoon, El Tigre, was actually one of my favorites growing up, and had a definite feel to it that stuck with me in a similar way to how the Book of Life has. And I think part of that comes down to his iconic style. The best way to describe any of his work is Mexican as fuck. Looking at the story, it addresses an inherently Mexican issue, that being the tradition of bullfighting as a whole, and the cultural connotations surrounding it. I'm not gonna get too deep into it here, but yeah, bullfighting is kinda something we don't talk too much about because it's significant to some Mexican cultures, but the practice is also about, you know, torturing an animal until finishing it off with a neck slit after severely damaging its arteries. Yeah, they didn't teach you that in cartoons, did they? Fun fact, the cape in a bullfight is only red to cover the blood on the bull from abuse to make it so mad in the first place. So our main character being a guy that opposes that does really say something about how Jorge is willing to critique his own culture while also embracing it. That's kind of how Manolo as a character is as well. He doesn't completely disregard the skills he learned in training to be a bullfighter, and he doesn't look down on his father or extended family for who they are thanks to the way they were raised. But he's also adamant about his beliefs and shows them plainly instead of hiding it. It's a really creative spin on the whole, I don't want to be a factory man dad, I want to be a rock star bit, by making Manolo someone that still respects his family and doesn't throw away everything he was taught when it can help him in a tight situation. Shows how he isn't so prideful that he can't understand why his family is the way they are, or how their skills are still useful. Gutierrez's Mexican cultural influence isn't limited to his storytelling either. On the more artistic side as well, Jorge's inspirations are really clear, much of his artwork having tons of skulls, bright colors, and macabre whimsy similar to Dia de los Muertos itself, and many other pieces of Mexican culture. His art feels really graphic, and like it was made for a poster, with little details all over to really add to the overall charm. From the main city of San Angel to the land of the remembered and forgotten, each is brimming with so much character to make you remember the spot and its details, especially through the usage of color and comedic exaggeration. When it comes to character designs as well, if you've ever taken an art class, a phrase you've probably heard thrown around a lot is the idea that a good character design can be distinguished by their silhouette alone, meaning you can remove all the details of their model and still know who they are through their basic shape. And goddamn does Jorge Gutierrez take that to heart. Trust me, if his name is ever on the credits of any show for character design, you'll always, and I do mean always, know exactly which character he did for very obvious reasons. You'd think they were caricatures of other people with how well they exaggerate certain expressions on the face and body to make them stand out and become more easily recognizable. He seems to put heavy emphasis on using basic shapes to make more complex designs that flow seamlessly as you look at it from top to bottom, having a figure kind of similar to a toy. The Book of Life specifically takes advantage of this attribute of his designs by making all the characters in the image of wooden dolls used to tell a story, only having the various god characters not have appearances like they're made out of wood, which also shows you how separated they are from the rest of the cast. The toy aesthetic crosses over to the in-universe villains too, with them having slender bodies and big arms they use to grapple around and steal things. Everything is so animated and well thought out to make the designs fully make sense in the world the story is being told in, and thankfully, the same courtesy is applied when talking about the I briefly talked about how well all the songs work in the Book of Life in my Cinderella video, but it really is an accomplishment that a partial jukebox musical could use all of its songs effectively to move the plot along in a meaningful way and establish characters' deeper traits. Each song feels tailor-made to the film and its general vibe, sometimes making changes to give a more mariachi or guitar-ridden melody, keeping its theme with the rest of the movie, and weirdly that's something I never see happen, and I feel like studios should take the chance to do it more often, because the Book of Life is the culmination of that idea in its best form. When it comes to using licensed music in a meaningful way, you don't need to look any further than the first real song of the movie, I Will Wait by Mumford & Sons. Believe it or not, I didn't recognize at first that the song was a popular indie hit from the mid-2010s because that wasn't how it sounded or acted in the story. Each lyric feels in tune with the characters and what they're going through. Now I'll be bold as well as strong and use my head alongside my heart. That lyric describes how both Manolo and Joaquin want to act for Maria and try to accomplish when it's necessary for them to make harder decisions. In a way, you could even see it as foreshadowing, and that's amazing considering it's repurposing lyrics from a song with a different meaning in full context. More than anything though, I've gotta give credit to Manolo's rendition of Creep by Radiohead. While the original song is much more angsty and kind of self-loathing in a way that makes you think about how pathetic you can be when comparing yourself to a girl you think is out of your league, Manolo's reasoning is completely different, and therefore also gives a completely separate vibe. In the context of Manolo's singing, he's in the aftermath of having decided to not kill a bull in his first fight, making his father feel like he's disgraced the family name, leaving Manolo feeling alien and like he's already lost before he can impress Maria, like he hasn't grown at all since they last met. When Manolo sings the line, "What am I doing here? I don't belong here," you understand he's not only singing because he thinks his chances with Maria are gone, but as he sings in the bullfighting ring where he couldn't live up to his family's standards, you know he feels like the one thing people expect of him isn't something he can do, and therefore he wonders if he can belong song anywhere, if at all. In my opinion, it's probably one of the most impactful songs in the film for that reason, and with how well shown Manolo's absolute sorrow is, the scene still makes me feel for him whenever I see it, in part thanks to Diego Luna's great rendition. Not to say that the original songs for the film aren't great in their own right, they are, it's just there isn't quite as much I have to say about them. The main two, I Love You Too Much and The Apology Song, are both well-written, simple, straightforward songs that do the job well and make for a greater experience with the film, capturing the emotions and sentiments of Manolo rather well. They're memorable and nice, I just don't have much to talk about when that's all I really need. The Book of Life is a really unique movie in so many ways beyond it being a big-budgeted film focused on Dia de los Muertos. I mean, even in that regard, it's a very different interpretation than a lot of other movies similar in nature going off visuals alone. You can tell creativity was a major goal of the film's crew, and by taking several different worn-out tropes to do so, it accomplishes in making the viewing experience feel new and refreshing, yet familiar in a way that's comforting. Whether you're a big fan of Jorge Gutierrez, a celebrator of Dia de los Muertos, a fan of other cultures, or whatever, I'd say that The Book of Life is a good choice for sitting down and just having a good time. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and have a good November. Peace.